Welcome to Women's Wealth and Wellness Unleashed. I'm Lori Falk, and together with my three powerhouse co-hosts and a slew of thought leaders and luminaries, we're bringing you a scintillating talk show style podcast that will disrupt the worlds of wealth and wellness as we know them today. We invite you to go on this journey with us as we offer you a paradigm shift that empowers you to change your approach to these key areas of your life. Join us and discover the truth that the future of wealth and wellness begins with you. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Women's Wealth and Wellness Unleashed. We are so glad you're joining us here today as we're preparing for the holiday season. There's holidays galore in the month of December, everything from the solstice to Hanukkah to Christmas and beyond. And so today we want to talk about the topic of silent nights, finding your inner calm when family dynamics get loud. You know, we can go an entire year sometimes and not see some of our extended family members. And during the course of that year, often many of us in this listening audience do our personal growth work and we work on ourselves and we improve ourselves and we do all these amazing things and we become these evolved, more highly conscious versions of ourselves. And then it's time for the holidays and we're sitting at the table with family and somebody says something and it hits your trigger. Now, the key is if you've done your personal growth work, that means you've cleared the old subconscious patterns for that trigger, and you have actually created a new neural pathway. Okay, so let me just step back a little bit. So when something happens that emotionally triggers us, it fires a neural pathway in the brain. So here we are, point A, trigger happens, and we immediately fly over to point B. Now we go and we do all this amazing healing work and clear up all that stuff in our subconscious. And we create this new neural pathway. So now when that trigger occurs, instead of going from point A to point B, we go to point C. How exciting, right? And we become these more evolved, easier to get along with, incredible humans. And then we're sitting at that table. Here's what no one tells you. Even though you created the new neural pathway, the old one is still there. And that's what sets you into this downward spiral, falling right back into the old patterns. And before you know it, it's like the 10-year younger version of you sitting at that table instead of your higher, more evolved conscious self. Any of you ladies experience anything like that?
Oh God, it's almost embarrassing sometimes, feeling so amazingly human that with all of our tools, these things do happen. I think there's an expression, if you want to see how evolved you are, go visit your family. I didn't make that up, but I think it's pretty legit. So yeah, that absolutely happens, and I'm glad we're talking about this because we're here, Women's Wealth and Wellness Unleashed, and probably every aspect of our lives impacts our wellness and our wealth, but probably not too many more things than our families. So I was thinking about, Jenny's comments when we were talking about, weight management and all of the triggers that we have for eating, that our families bring up. And, that this time of year has all of this spending. So it's potentially an emotional landmine. And I think, one of the reasons we wanted to talk about this today, because it is, we're going right into the holiday season, is that collectively here, we all have some tips and perspectives to offer. I know that I do. So I'm looking forward to sharing those today, but I want to hear what Jenny and Leslie have to say first.
Absolutely. And I think you're so right, aren't you? Christmas time, everything gets thrown into the mix. We kind of put our health largely to one side because we eat all the things we don't normally eat. We drink all the things we don't normally drink to excess. We spend more money than we usually plan to spend. And then the relatives come into the mix as well. And we know it can be volatile because we're emotional, we're tired, we try to do too much. As women, or at least I know me in particular, I know I am guilty of this. We want to create that perfect environment, to be the perfect host, to be the perfect parent, to be the perfect wife. And it starts being too much. And it starts being more than we feel we can cope with and want to cope with. And just like you said, Susan, I've got a number of tips that I would like to suggest from my own experience, but I'm going to bring Jen into the conversation because I know you've got lots to say on this as well.
Oh, family is fun. That is,
What you're
you know,
telling yourself, right?
it is, fake it till you make it sometimes. I think that we do, like you said, Leslie, expectations they tend to be the root of all disappointment, right? So I think, thinking about expectations versus reality is sometimes causes a lot of heartache. And I think we need to kind of break free from those expectations. Um, yeah, I think so many factors, and money has a lot to do with it, especially if you're used to traveling such large distances for Christmas, and not every Christmas is affordable in that way. So it can put strains, before you even get to your location, to grandma's house or whatever it is. Um, And, especially this year in particular, coming off of an election, over here, Leslie, especially, it's can be quite volatile for a lot of family members that are divided, and sometimes people are shunned and they're not welcomed, and these kinds of things. So it can be really hard for a lot of people.
I
That's
think as well, yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. And to your point there about the election, I think what is very different in the US than what happens in the UK, because we too had an election back in July, but literally the old Prime Minister hands the baton to the new Prime Minister that day. So there isn't that period of waiting. There isn't that period of not knowing. And people kind of put their differences aside to wait and see what unfolds. Whereas in America, we know we've gone from November the 5th until January the 9th or 10th, with things still very much up in the air. So I think for you guys, if there are issues going on in families because of the way the vote went, then they're still very much going to be lingering, aren't they?
You know, the holidays are coming up, but right before the election, there was an event in my family. It was a birthday that I traveled for. And gratefully, my family, my immediate family was all on the same political side. I'm not even sure I would have been able to go. It was just the weekend before the election. But my brother, whose birthday it was, had some close friends that were on the other side. And literally, the invitation for the party went out. No gifts, no politics. And that conversation was banned completely. And that's not a bad recommendation these days.
No, it's not a bad recommendation. And the other thing is, if the topic comes up, it's really not important to be right. What's important is to listen. Just compassionately listen. Because the fact of the matter is that your cousin sees it through his lens, your sister sees it through her lens, and you see it through your lens. But if we could all just take a step back and try on being that other person and listen to ask questions rather than trying to be right, try to understand why they feel the way they feel. It's really no different than having a conversation about anything else. If you really want to have that true heart-to-heart connection, you've got to practice compassionate listening. It's very important.
And
Absolutely.
Lori, you've mentioned that a number of times in our conversations, and it's one of the things about you that I really seek to model. That you're better at this point, you're better at that than I am. But I think it's an example that we can all follow, because I know it's not that you don't have your own convictions. But that's one of the things I think about managing triggers is, and my generation, I think, is more resilient than the younger people who, like can't bear to hear something that might offend them. It's kind of like so-and-so has another opinion, and so what? I mean, ultimately, and internally, one of the ways I manage that is I can be as judgmental as I want in my own mind and satisfy the part of me that needs to be right. I just don't really need to say anything about it because I actually don't care what that person thinks, and I'm not trying to change their mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's one of the ways I manage that. And I've mentioned, I'm very open about the fact that I have an inner bitch that I manage. She's pretty happy being silently judgmental. I'm not necessarily a saint, but I am pretty easy to get along with, for those reasons.
It's really, really interesting. I can have political conversations with people on any side of the platforms, and just listen and just ask questions and learn a lot and be very calm and peaceful. But when I see someone who is like struggling with their health and only listening to the doctors and not open to any of the alternative approaches that scientifically have already been proven that I know would be absolutely perfect. Oh my God, that's when I have to literally bite my tongue, because it's like I know too much, right? I mean, it's a whole different ball game. It's a whole different ball game for me. So
It is. That is a tough one because we do know better than most people. We have more information.
yes, we have more information than their doctors, and that's the saddest part. And I was just in a situation where my adopted mom was in the hospital with viral pneumonia, and she was there for six nights. That's a long, long time. And I begged my sister to just give her a nebulizer filled with redox signaling molecules, which would help her lungs heal internally and get her oxygen levels to stabilize much faster. Well, the doctor didn't know what it was and didn't have time to learn about it. So forget about it. No, let's just let her sit there for day after day, night after night, and give her medications, and it's sad because I tried to explain to the family, the kids in med school right now are studying this. She just didn't.
Yet.
So, yeah. So,
Part-
that was a
that
tough
Is that a
one.
good example though, that, and going back to the topic around, Christmas and being able to manage family situations, that sometimes you've got to let go of the need to control, to let go of the need to be right. So just taking a very simple example, I don't know how to, I'm hoping you do this in America. Again, we have a tradition in the UK where the Christmas pudding, you put brandy on it, you light the brandy, and whoosh, the Christmas pudding, lights up basically. Now, some people will say use brandy, and somebody else might say use rum, and somebody else might say, my God, no, don't use any spirit because you're going to set the house on fire. And I think it's little things like that that we feel we need to state, I am right, it's my way. And sometimes it's better to sit back and actually go, for the sake of family accord, I'm going to let Uncle Jim think he's right on this occasion, even though I know brandy is better than rum. Because I think we can, can't we? As you said, Laurie, we can get caught up in our own heads. We can get caught up knowing we are right, but actually that just aggrieves and makes a situation worse, particularly when not all members of the family might get on. Some are older and therefore may feel slightly more entitled. It's just, what can you do to keep your inner calm so you can have the best day And I suppose that is another point to make there. It is Christmas Day. It's one day, but we put so much pressure on ourselves, don't we, for it to be, going back to what Jen said, be perfect. Does it have to be perfect?
Well, let's
Leslie,
talk about that. I think we need to go right into those. Let's talk about some hacks leading up to the holidays. Susan, I know you have some hacks up your sleeve of things that you can do to prepare yourself emotionally before you get into these situations. I know I've got a few, so let's talk about them, ladies.
All right, I'm going to mention a couple of quick ones, and you just prompted one, and that is that I often do actually prepare for tough questions. There've been a lot of controversial things going on in the last few years, and I like to avoid controversy. And I like to think I've developed an art of terminating conversations. And I literally will go sometimes to a function like this with a list of responses to the, well, how'd you feel about the election? I will deflect and go like, I'd much rather talk about dinner. I will do that kind of thing. The day after the election, I went to a restaurant. Somebody said, are you happy about today? And I said, I'm happy to be here. Let's eat. So I do invite people to prepare. But Leslie asked a question that I have an even better answer to, because she said, what can we do? And this is actually something I came up with 20 years ago when I was at a family event with my ex-husband when we were engaged, and his family was really challenging and he was very triggered, and he was smart enough to ask my advice. And because he was such a creative person, I said, I think probably the easiest way for you to have a good experience with this is, instead of participating in this drama, stand back and observe it as theater. And I am telling you, that was one of the best pieces of advice I've ever given anyone. And I've used it a lot. That literally, we can dissociate from a situation and observe it rather than getting caught up in it. And when we're talking about families, I mean, theater, drama. I know this sounds, we're smiling here, but from that perspective, it can almost be entertaining.
Yeah. I've written that one
Uncle
down.
Jim's being an a-hole again, and
Yeah.
those two are going at it again, and I'm just sitting here watching the movie.
Sorry, Uncle Jim.
Yeah.
Sorry, Uncle Jim. I don't have an Uncle Jim, so I wasn't actually,
don't.
all right, sorry about that. But you get the point. That is
Yeah.
probably one of my best hacks is for life, is to approach it as theater rather than as something that, we are victimized by. So I have more, but I know we all do. So let's hear another good one.
Well, I think for me, I know that most families, and I know Lori's going to touch on the epigenetics and things of that nature, but we all have a lot of unresolved conflict that comes up. Whether we think that it's going to or not, it typically surfaces at the most inopportune time. So, like you said, Susan, I think in preparation for that, kind of how do you kind of get into that mindset of, oh, when you start to feel that some of us, we start to get really hot in the armpits, maybe around the neck, we start to kind of get that flushed feeling. And when that happens, it's a really good time to just walk outside and take a break. To kind of maybe start thinking now about your favorite song or something that you can automatically switch to. That is a little trick that I try to do, is just, if when I'm in a situation and I start hearing conversations going that I'm not necessarily wanting to be a part of, but I might try to, somebody might try to suck me in, I'll start just humming to myself, and then I'll go find something else to do. There's a lot of little tips and tricks that you can prepare for, but I would love to hear Lori's take on where this is all coming from.
Well, as a coach, this is what I spend my entire month of December doing, is helping people prepare for holidays, right? So Some of it's simple, some of it takes a little bit more time. I mean, the number one tool is creating your day, like deciding ahead of time, sitting down and writing out. Today was an incredible day. Everyone in the family got along so well. We all enjoyed being together. We enjoyed our history of family. We really celebrated each other with love. I mean, really get into the emotions of it and actually write it out, because you're setting an intention rather than sitting around worrying all day about what might happen. Why don't you wonder about how amazing it could be and do that through the power of intention, and then actually write it and ground it into third dimensional reality. It doesn't have to be, a fancy thesis. It can just be a paragraph or a couple of bullet points, whatever it is. But you're literally going into it with the intention that it's going to be amazing, as opposed to, oh shit, it's the family gathering. Wonder what's going to happen. You just don't go there. That's just not okay. And the other thing that I have done often is to literally, I work with the angelic realm. So I call in the angels and I ask the angels to surround the entire home of where we're gathering and to infuse everyone's heart with light and love, and to just infuse the entire environment with light and love. And at the very first time I did this, my significant other at the time said, on the way home, what the hell did you do? I knew you were doing something in the car. He said, that normally would have ended up in World War III. And I am shocked at how smooth all of those conflicts went. I mean, it literally can be that simple. And the other thing that I do now, because I have the Healy, this little affordable wearable biofeedback device, it has a program on it called Coherence. Yep. So it's in my pocket, it's in my bra, it's wherever I gotta stick it, so nobody knows it's there, but I am emitting unconditional love frequencies throughout the entire gathering. So I've got the angels, I've got the intention, and I've got love frequencies. It's kind of magical.
You can also be changing your own frequencies. That's, I like to use that in preparation as I put the Healy on a lot of the mental balance programs,
Yeah.
or a lot of chakra programs, heart opening programs and that kind of thing. So you're already really kind of setting yourself up for success with those. Leslie, what about you?
I'm going to come in with, as you can probably imagine, the whole thing around money and the whole issue around probably presents in particular, because presents are nearly the number one thing that puts the most stress on people. And sometimes that comes down to us tying up our self-worth. What will they think about me if I don't bring the best present? What will they think about me if I don't give them the most thoughtful present? Will they think I don't love them as much as I should, etc.? And I think in the UK last Christmas, we gave children 1.2 billion pounds, 1.2 billion pounds of unwanted presents. Presents that ended up in landfill, in drawers, never used, never to be looked at, because we attach so much around Christmas with giving the perfect gift. So what I always suggest to people to do is to have a conversation, to set a budget, to find out, does anybody really want that brand new pair of socks, that 10th scarf, that Christmas jumper on Christmas Day that's going to be worn for one day and then be out of season, basically? And actually to start thinking about, what is the meaning of Christmas? Is the meaning of Christmas the gift you are giving to Uncle Jim? We're going to mention him again. Or is it about being together? And I think the royal family, and I know Americans love our royal family have a great idea. They set a £10 limit for the present that they're going to exchange with each other. And it has to be the funniest present they can find for that person. So it injects some fun rather than injecting concern about, is this the ideal present? How much am I going to spend? And actually, why not even go as far as thinking about, why don't we just buy one present? So a secret Santa type thing, one present for one relative, and that's it. That's all we have to commit to. And that leads into my other point. Just learn to say no. So rather than buying presents for everybody, that is going to ruin your January, just say no. I'm not going to buy presents for everybody. What I am going to do is this, and make it fun. Make it fun, make it effective, but make it inexpensive, because that means you're going to have a much happier January and not be sitting there worried about your credit card dropping in January and having a whopping amount to pay back. That would
Leslie,
be
I heard a statistic a number of years ago, and coming from a Jewish family, I've never had the burden of Christmas because it really looks like a burden to me as an
yeah.
outsider. You know, for me, it's voluntary, so it's fun. But I remember hearing a statistic a number of years ago that in the US, 8% of a family's annual income was spent on Christmas, which just to, put the perspective that
Yeah.
you are, offering.
Yeah.
Um, that
And who remembers? If you were to quiz anybody about what did you have last Christmas that stood out for you, we would probably all take a few minutes to find that answer, if we could find an answer, because it's momentary. I remember the tree going up and, singing Christmas songs and just being together. I don't need presents. I just need to be with those I want to be with. And I think for most of us, that is far, far more important. But we put so much store by what we are giving, when really people's presence should be
yeah,
present enough, I
their
think.
presence.
Yeah.
Although actually, Leslie, I'm gonna offer something that might be a little radical because I really wanted this conversation to feel fairly complete. Many different people are going to be listening to what we're sharing here today. And like Lori, I've been counseling other people for a very long time, and I've heard so many stories. And I loved what Lori was sharing about coming into the experience by establishing a really high vibration. Because, we talk about that a lot here, and we're going to talk about it a lot more, that everything is frequency, and, we attract the energy that we put out. And that is probably an optimal way to approach anything, especially a family gathering. However, here's my radical thing, but I think this is probably a meaningful message for some people. Most of us have families that are workable, where there is enough good feeling. That, as you said, Leslie, that's the important part of the holiday, and where doing something magical like Lori does, calling in the angels and, holding light, will make all the difference. I reluctantly say that some of the stories that I've heard from others, thankfully not my own, is that there are some family situations that are so toxic and so potentially abusive that there have been times I've had this conversation with, certain individuals, and I said, you might consider honoring yourself by just not subjecting yourself to that. So while we're talking about the opportunities that most of us do have for greater connection and, less triggering, I do think, unfortunately, there are situations that are not that workable. And I just want to allow for people to give themselves permission to honor themselves if that's true for them. And that, many of us create family with people that we're not related to or are not as closely related to. I'm, I lost my parents. I have lots and lots of cousins I'm reconnecting with to provide that are providing that sense of family, and I get to choose. So, like I said, I know that might seem a little radical, but I thought it was important.
It's very, very important. In fact, for years, I had a tradition of I would have a gathering at Christmas Day Eve. So past Christmas Eve, past Christmas Day, it's like 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock on Christmas Day evening. And I would invite like 20, 25 of my spiritual family or close friends. And it was a potluck, bring a
Got great leftovers at that
Right,
point.
right. And that way, if someone was out of town, they'd be back and they could join us. If someone had nothing going on during Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, they had something to look forward to. And at the end of the day, we were surrounded by like-minded souls who we loved and adored and cherished. So it was always a lovely, lovely gathering. And I think I'm going to reinstitute that this year as well.
And Lori, this year would be the right time to do it because bizarrely, the first night of Hanukkah is Christmas night. It's really late this year. So it's kind of a special night. And I've done that Christmas night gathering with friends. It's awesome.
Yep. Well, I'd invite you ladies, but you all live so darn far away.
Might be a little
we've
bit
got
of
better
trek
weather,
for me, but
so
next time.
thanks, but no thanks. Well, anything else we want to top off with today?
No,
I think we
everybody's
covered
so
some
quiet.
really amazing stuff. So just thinking if there's anything unsaid on my part. And it's another hack that I think we're going to jump into more because it was life-changing for me in the past couple of years of approaching life from the perspective that what if there are no problems, there's just choices to make and things to do. It would be a very valuable mindset for these gatherings and really for everything else. So I'm just offering that as a little teaser now as something that we'll return to. But if it resonates for, the rest of this month, I invite anybody to explore that. It's been life-changing for me and many people that I know.
Absolutely. Well, we want to thank all of you for joining us today for another episode of Women's Wealth and Wellness Unleashed. And as we send you off into your joy-filled holidays, I just want to leave you with this one thought. When in doubt, ask yourself, what would love do? It's really that simple. Happy holidays, everyone, and God bless.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Thank you so much for joining us today on Women's Wealth and Wellness Unleashed, where we empower women to take control of the two most important areas of their life, their health and their wealth. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with another amazing woman who's ready to elevate her wealth and wellness journey. Stay connected with us by heading to our website and joining our Facebook community. All the details can be found in the show notes. Until next time, keep thriving and unleashing your highest potential.